Hello and welcome back to Wyrd Wessex. I'm Andy.
And I'm Craig.
It's Valentine's Day, Craig. I'm supposed to be busy with Becky, like, roses, chocolates, romantic dinner, all that. But you've dragged me here to record. What exactly? You've got me a present at least, right? Valentine's Day, come
Well,
on.
well, I mean, nothing says I love you like a good true crime story, right? Um, besides, I've written a poem for you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, roses are red, violets are blue. Charles Walton was found. Well, you know.
No, I don't actually.
All right. Well, speaking of, you know, let's share this macabre and gruesome story with you then. Um, Some say it was the work of witches, but it starts in a small, quiet English village. In the biting winter of 1945, just as World War II was drawing to a close, a small, quiet English village became the scene of one of the most perplexing and disturbing murders in British history. A case that continues to intrigue true crime enthusiasts and folklorists alike. Our story is about a 74-year-old named Charles Walton, an agricultural worker who had lived in Lower Quinton all his life. He was a widower who shared his small cottage, number 15 Lower Quinton, with his 33-year-old niece, Edith Isabel Walton, whom he had adopted 30 years previously after her mother's death. While some accounts refer to her as his wife, the most common and likely account, given their age difference, is that she was his niece. So Walton was described as something of a loner. Some say he preferred the company of horses to people, having earned a reputation as a trainer of horses in his youth. It is said that he did not socialise much with his neighbours, though he was not actively disliked.
Despite his relatively solitary nature, Walton sought casual farm work wherever he could find it. And for the previous 9 months, he'd been working on a farm for a local farmer named Alfred Potter at the Firs farm. February the 14th, 1945, dawned crisp and cold as Charles Walton set out early that morning to do hedge trimming work at the Firs, located on the slopes of Meon Hill. Now, this location, steeped in local legends, was a place of both reverence and fear for the townsfolk. But we'll return to the mysteries of Meon Hill later. According to Edith, he'd left home without his purse, carrying only his pitchfork and a slash hook, which is a rather nasty-looking pruning tool with a sharp and straight edge on one side and a concave cutting edge on the other. She went to work herself, expecting him home by 4 p.m. Edith returned at around 6 and felt a pang of unease when she found he wasn't there. She went to see her neighbour, who was an agricultural worker by the name of Harry Beasley, who lived at number 16, and together they made their way to the Firs to alert Alfred Potter. Potter claimed to have last seen Charles earlier that day, slashing hedges in a place called Hillground.
The three of them set out in the gathering darkness in the direction of the spot where Charles had last been seen, their concern growing with each step. Eventually they found his body near a hedgerow in a secluded field near Meon Hill, a scene of horrific violence that would haunt the memories of those who found him. His throat had been savagely slashed open, the wound stark against the white of his shirt. He had been beaten over the head with his own stick, and the slash hook had been buried deep into his neck. The tines of his pitchfork were driven into either side of his neck, pinning him to the ground, the handle wedged beneath a crossmember of the hedge. And most disturbingly, a large cross had been carved into his chest.
Edith's screams alerted a nearby walker named Harry Peachy, who went to alert the police. While Potter guarded the scene, Beasley took Edith home. PC Lomondsi arrived at 7:05 p.m., followed by a Stratford CID and forensic scientist Professor Webster at 11:30 p.m. The body was removed at 1:30 a.m. Potter's statement to a detective Inspector Toombs later revealed that he had last seen Walton around noon, with only a small amount of hedging left to do. The investigation quickly escalated, with the Warwickshire police requesting assistance from Scotland Yard, suspecting a madman or nearby Italian POWs that had escaped. It was also noted at this time that Charles's watch was also missing. Chief Inspector Fabian and Detective Sergeant Webb arrived on February the 16th, along with Italian-speaking Detective Sergeant Saunders. Potter himself became a suspect, and the Italian POWs were interviewed, though they were ultimately discounted.
Professor Webster's postmortem revealed the brutal nature of the attack. Walton's trachea had been cut and he had bruising to his chest and several broken ribs. His body also bore signs of a struggle with defensive wounds, including a cut on his left hand and bruising on his right hand and forearm. So Webster concluded that Walton's wounds had been caused by two weapons, a stabbing weapon and a cutting weapon, presumably the pitchfork and the slash hook. He had also been brutally beaten over the head with his own thick walking stick, which was found approximately 3.2 meters from his body, blood and hair adhering to it. It was determined that Walton died between 1 and 2 p.m. Curiously, Webster's official report makes no specific mention of the cross, which is a detail that later looms large in the popular folklore of this case. And also interestingly, his shirt had been opened, his trousers had been unfastened at the top, his fly was unbuttoned, which is a kind of detail that adds a bit of mystery surrounding his death.
Or was he taking a wee when he was hit over the head and then killed?
Yeah, well, maybe.
Yeah, it's, a horrible way to go. Over 500 residents of Lower Quinton, some as young as 11, and other individuals in the area on February the 14th were interviewed. A detailed search aided by the Royal Engineers and their mine detectors was undertaken, but to no avail. Not one single clue was found. Fabian and Webb eventually returned to London, leaving Detective Superintendent Alex Spooner to continue the search. The murder gripped Spooner and he doggedly pursued the case, returning to Lower Quinton for years afterwards, even as others had given up hope. Decades later, in 1960, Walton's pocket watch was rumoured to have been found in the outhouse of his cottage.
79 years later, the mystery endures. Who murdered Charles Walton? Alfred Potter quickly became the prime suspect. His behaviour on the night of the murder raised immediate questions. He seemed agitated and evasive, and his story about the time he saw Charles in the field kept changing. Rumours persisted that Potter owed Walton money, though no proof ever surfaced. Fabian found no evidence of violence in Potter's past or any quarrels with Walton, describing him as morose and sullen, yet also cunning and strong. And then there were the trousers. A few spots were found that might have been blood, but they'd been scrubbed too thoroughly to be analysed.
Well, here is where we look at some of the weird things surrounding the case. The case took an even more unsettling turn when it was revealed that Charles Walton had witnessed a death in that same field decades earlier. On February the 14th, 1885, a man named John Hathaway died in that very spot 60 years to the day before Walton's own murder. The circumstances on Hathaway's death remained somewhat unclear, adding another layer to the mystery. This bizarre coincidence ignited local superstitions. Was it merely a tragic twist of fate, or as some whispered, was there something more sinister at play? Was this some kind of debt owed to an ancient force, a dark echo from the past reaching across the decades and claiming yet another victim?
But the eerie connections to the past don't end there. Another case decades earlier bears a striking resemblance to the murder of Charles Walton. The story of Anne Tennant, though separated by time, shares some chilling similarities. Anne was a resident of Long Compton, 15 miles from Lower Quinton, and she was murdered at the age of 80. On the 15th of September 1875, at about 8 o'clock in the evening, Anne left her house.
Left her house.
There's a moose loose about this house.
About this house.
Fucking hell. On the 15th of September 1875, at about 8 o'clock in the evening, Anne left her house to buy a loaf of bread. On her way back, she met some farm workers returning home from harvesting in the fields. One of the group was a local man, James Hayward, who was described at the time, perhaps disrespectfully, as something akin to the village idiot. It is known that he had been drinking cider, and without warning he attacked Anne, wielding a pitchfork with deadly intent and stabbing her in the legs and head. A local farmer named Taylor heard the commotion and ran to Anne's aid.
He restrained Hayward until a constable arrived. Anne was taken to her daughter's house but died of her injuries at around 11:15 that night. Hayward claimed that Anne was a witch, and there was other witches in the village whom he intended to deal with in the same way. Although committed to trial for murder, he was found not guilty on the grounds of insanity and spent the rest of his life in Broadmoor Criminal Lunatic Asylum, a place reserved for the most dangerous and criminally insane. He was recorded as dying there at the age of 59 in the first half of 1890, 55 years before Charles Walton's death. On the 13th of February 1954, the eve of the 9th anniversary of Walton's murder, the Daily Mirror revisited the killing of Anne Tennant, drawing parallels between the two cases and alleging a further undisclosed link. The report, which caused a stir at the time, stated, "The police have found one other link between the killings, but I am pledged not to reveal it." The only real similarities between the murders that a pitchfork was used, and both victims had been accused of witchcraft.
Which does bring us to something we haven't mentioned yet. So Charles Walton was accused locally of witchcraft. Locals believed that Walton was a witch whose powers were feared by some villagers. Some feared that Walton possessed supernatural powers and was capable of casting the evil eye. Rumours circulated that Walton also kept natterjack toads as pets, small warty toads with a distinctive yellow stripe down their back, and he used them to blast or blight the crops and livestock of local farmers. Two specific incidents were cited as evidence of Walton's alleged witchcraft. The failure of the 1944 harvest, which was a difficult year for local farmers, and the death of Potter's heifer on the 13th of February, just one day before his murder. It was claimed that his alleged witchcraft led him to be murdered in a ritualistic manner which involved his blood soaking into the ground to replenish the soil's fertility, a practice that was claimed to be rooted in ancient pagan belief.
But the accusations of witchcraft weren't the only strange elements surrounding Charles Walton's case. Local folklore also played a significant role, particularly the legend of a spectral black dog. One evening, Fabian was walking the slopes of Meon Hill when a large black dog ran by him and vanished into the twilight. A minute later, Fabian saw one of the local children walking towards him. "Are you looking for your dog, son?" Fabian asked the lad. "What dog?" said the boy. "A big black one. Ran off the other way," Fabian told him. The lad turned white as a sheet and bolted off into the gloom, leaving Fabian nonplussed. A shiver ran down his spine. As we've discussed many times, spectral black dogs are deeply embedded in British folklore and legend. The belief goes at least as far back as the Anglo-Saxons, and very probably much, much further. The belief seems to have been prevalent in Lower Quinton at the time of Charles Walton's murder, as we'll soon discover. The day after Fabian's encounter, a black dog was found hanged from a tree near the murder site. And a few days after that, another black dog was run over and killed by a police car just outside the village. Attempts to trace the owner failed. As this sequence of events became common knowledge, cooperation from the locals, which could at best be described as grudging, reluctant and hesitant, with many villagers offering only vague or contradictory information, ceased altogether.
So we've talked about Charles Walton, the murder, the witchcraft accusations, but there's another Charles Walton story floating around, and it's a weird one.
You mean the short story by James Bloom?
Yeah, that's the one. So in the 1920s, folklorist and historian J. Harvey Bloom recorded a local tale from 1885 about a young lad from Lower Quinton named Charles Walton. This Charles Walton, upon encountering a black dog for 9 successive evenings, also witnessed a headless lady in a silk dress, and shortly after, he learned of his sister's death. Could it be the same Charles Walton? It's highly improbable given the time difference, but it is a chilling coincidence nonetheless.
Another intriguing, though speculative, element of the Charles Walton case is a connection to the nearby Rollright Stones. These ancient monuments, a mysterious stone circle and a solitary standing stone, are steeped in history and folklore. Some have wondered if they're connected to Walton's murder, perhaps linked to ancient pagan rituals. It's a fascinating theory, but there's absolutely no solid evidence to support it. Gerald B. Gardner, in The Meaning of Witchcraft, directly addresses this speculation, stating, "The Whispering Nights are about 12 miles away from Lower Quinton, making a direct connection unlikely. And as no one knows for certain just what the Druid ceremonies were, it's impossible to say that his death was a reproduction of one." So while the Rollright Stones add to the mystique, the connection to the Walton case remains purely speculative.
And then there's Meon Hill itself, the imposing barrow that overlooks the fields where Charles Walton's body was found. This ancient burial mound is steeped in its own legends. Locals whisper of ghostly figures seen on its slopes, of strange lights flickering in the darkness, and of general sense of unease that hangs over the hill. Some people believe the barrow is haunted, that it possesses some kind of power. And the fact that Walton's body was found so close to this place of ancient mystery has, of course, led to further speculation. Could the murder be connected to the barrow in some way? Was it a sacrifice? Was it part of some ancient ritual? As with the Rollright Stone, there is no proof of any such connection. It's simply another layer of mystery, another thread in the tapestry of folklore that surrounds the Charles Walton case.
Speaking of strange occurrences, there is another story we found just a short distance away that unfolded around the same time. Another chilling tale that has captured the imagination and spawned its own set of legends, the mystery of Hagley Wood. It's another one of those cases that even decades later continues to fascinate and puzzle people. And like the Walton case, it's a story that's become mixed up with speculation and folklore.
So, what actually happened in Hagley Wood?
Well, the core facts are these. In 1943, some kids stumbled across a body hidden inside a hollow wych elm tree in Hagley Wood. It was a woman's body, but her identity remains a complete mystery. The police investigated, but they couldn't figure out who she was or how she died. The cause of death is still unknown. It's a complete mystery. It was a gruesome discovery, a body hidden inside a trunk of an ancient tree. And what makes it even more unsettling is that, according to local accounts, the boys who found the body were deeply affected by the experience, said to have had disturbing dreams afterwards, vivid nightmares that haunted them for quite some time.
That's chilling. It's like something from a horror film.
Folk horror indeed, it is. Yeah, just adds another layer of mystery to the whole thing. Was it just the shock of finding the body, or was there something more to it? Something weird? And then there's graffiti. Someone scrawled the question, "Who put Bella in the wych elm?" on a wall nearby. That's where the name Bella comes from, but that's not a real name. Nobody knows who she was.
Creepy. So, who did put Bella in the wych elm?
Well, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? That's where the mystery really takes hold. Over the years, there have been all sorts of theories. Some people have suggested that a connection to witchcraft, pointing to the fact that the area has a history of occult activity, and that belladonna, a poisonous plant associated with witchcraft, was found near the body. It's a theory that adds up to the intrigue, but there's no concrete evidence to support it. The police investigation didn't turn up any solid leads. It's a complete mystery, and that's what makes it so compelling, isn't it? Like the unknown, the unanswered questions, the lingering sense of unease.
So, back to the case of Charles Walton. As we've covered already, this real-life murder case has been blurred into the folklore of the area, with details being added and embellished over time through retellings and local speculation. And here's where things get more complicated. While Fabian's official police report makes no mention of these more sensational elements, years later, in a memoir about his career, he wrote the following.
I advise anybody who is tempted at any time to venture into black magic, witchcraft, shamanism, call it what you will, to remember Charles Walton and to think of his death, which was clearly the ghastly climax of a pagan rite. There is no stronger argument for keeping as far away as possible from the villains with their swords, incense, and mumbo-jumbo. It is prudence on which your future peace of mind and even your life could depend.
But perhaps the most haunting detail of all is this. Charles Walton's grave is missing.
Missing?
Yeah, so in the quiet churchyard of Lower Quinton, where the villagers rest, there's no headstone to mark his final resting place, only a small weathered stone bearing just 3 letters, CHW. A relative, it is said, overwhelmed by the constant attention that the grave received each year, destroyed the original headstone. And so the mystery of Charles Walton endures, not just in the stories and the whispers, but in the empty space where his grave should be.
Well, actually, the story of Charles Walton does not end there. Its strange, often unsettling details and lingering questions have continued to capture the imagination, inspiring writers and filmmakers to explore the dark mysteries of England. A recent example is a 2024 documentary that revisits the case, delving into the evidence and the enduring mysteries surrounding his death. And perhaps one of the most intriguing aspects of Charles Walton's story is its undeniable potential influence on popular culture. Many have suggested that the case served as inspiration for the classic horror film The Wicker Man. And while director Robin Hardy denied any direct link, the film's themes of paganism and ritual sacrifice certainly resonate with the details of the Walton case, making the connection difficult to dismiss, even in the light of the director's denial. So yeah, that is a lovely, heartwarming, cozy Valentine's Day story. Thank you, Craig.
That's fine. Are you feeling hot and horny?
I'm feeling something. I'm feeling something. Hot, horny,
Aroused.
and unsettled.
Rigid. Like a
Richard.
corpse.
Oh my God. Something like that. Something like that. It's yeah, maybe a lingering sense of unease is more applicable.
That's the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah, more or less, more or less. They're close enough. That's like love is close to hate. Horny is close to a lingering sense of unease, I suppose.
What do they call? Hang on, no, because there's that French thing, isn't there, about the little, what they call
The little
organs,
death.
the little death. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, it's all connected.
Is it Le Mort Petit or Le Petit Mort? I don't know, but yeah.
Petit mort, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, should we do some weird news?
Don't want to talk about the case. You happy with that? Had you heard it before?
I'd heard bits of it before. I'd heard bits of it before. I didn't know quite how deep it went. But,
Hippity.
but yeah, I didn't know all the connections to it. I'd heard of it because I remember reading somewhere that it was connected to the Wicker Man, but I hadn't heard the amount of detail in there and the other connecting cases. So, I mean, where did you
Yeah.
first hear of it?
This morning.
Wicked. It's, you know, hot off the press, guys. It's Craig
literally
has
was-
nothing to do on Valentine's Day.
I was researching something else and I stumbled upon it and was like, we're doing this.
That's it.
It was more interesting than what I was looking at. So I turned the porn off.
The fancy French porn.
No, but I like all the little connections, the black dogs and stuff, are clearly people trying to like shoehorn stuff together. There's not, it's a brutal murder. But a lot of the other stuff, like we've pointed out already, you know, roll rights are 12 miles away. The other murder
Yeah.
case was it 14, 15 miles away? Like,
Yeah.
they're not really that close. So yeah, I mean, it was just interesting to be able to mix a bit of folklore into a murder case, to be honest. And
I mean, the bit about the killing, another killing on the same spot on Valentine's Day, that is a bit weird.
it is weird, especially as it says he witnessed it. It doesn't really go into
Yeah.
detail, but
Like, I'm guessing that means he saw the body,
yeah, I don't know.
unless he was working around the farm then. But yeah, that is creepy.
And the folklore about the boy seeing the black dog and the sister
Yeah.
dying, and it had the same name and was born around the same time as he would have been.
Yeah, it does make you wonder if it was at least inspired by him, you know? Like a story he told. I don't know. We don't know anything about him really, so
No, it's quite vague as well. Like when you look into that actual story, is some people say it's fictional, some people say that the guy who wrote it was a folklorist, and so it's an actual piece of folklore. I don't know. I believe that all of Charles Walton from our stories, sisters, were still alive when he died, which means that it can't have been him because the boy in the story loses a sister, right? So, yeah. So
yeah.
I almost said Happy Halloween, then Happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah, that's it.
All the
That's it.
same.
Let us know what you think. If you think it was witchcraft, was connected to the previous ones, or just really, really bad luck on Valentine's Day.
And presumably you're not watching this on Valentine's Day. If you are, my commiserations.
I mean, I don't know. There's worse people to spend Valentine's Day with you know, than with your two favorite weirdos, I guess.
Wait, is someone else here?
Well, on that note, I think that's a good place to end it. Until next time, I've been Andy.
I've been Craig.
Stay weird.
And don't blame the owls.